Well, hello there again, everybody. Kyle Nunrip here from the Indy Star, and just want to touch base with you on a few things, starting with the impending change in the transfer rule by the IHSAA that will come up, as we're here going into February 14th. It'll be the 21st, so next Friday is the next IHSAA board meeting, and they will vote on a rule change that will essentially allow for what's going to be called a first-time transfer. And what that will go into effect on June 1st of 2025 if it passes, which I get every indication that it will. Of course, this is if you've kind of been following along, has legislative pressure and has that change to kind of eliminate that language on athletic transfers, and also it's been amended into another bill on taking cash at all high school games, but that bill 1064 is going to the Senate for more discussion. I think that will happen in the next few weeks or so. But at any rate, this rule change by the IHSA would happen more quickly than that, and like I said, would go into effect on June 1st. So basically, what would happen is any freshman, sophomore, after their freshman, sophomore years, you would kind of have, if you haven't transferred before, you would sort of have what we've been calling sort of a free transfer. They're going to call it a first time transfer. So, they will have the opportunity, if you transfer in that situation, to move on to the school without any question as to your eligibility status. So that's sort of what that will be. There will be stipulations on, say if you're going into your senior year or if you transfer during the season, there will be a 30-day period during the competition season. So even if you play, cross country and baseball, or you run cross country and baseball, if you do those two things and you transfer, it will apply to both those sports. So you have a 30-day non-compete rule against you. So you have to sit out for that period of time. Also, if you transfer during a season, you would also have a 30-day non-compete period. So, those things would go into effect. And then also, if you're in a second time transfer, also that 30-day rule would go into effect at that point as well, unless there is other circumstances like a move or something from a lengthy move or whatever. So there are obviously, and there are, I'll get more into this. I'll write more about it, but a lot of these things have been happening there, as long as the IHSA has been around, or as long as we've had high school sports, there's been transfers. So nothing new from that standpoint. What will be new is this first time transfer. I think we'll looking on the positive side of this, and certainly I've heard a lot, on both sides, but a lot of negativity on, and I understand it, from the standpoint of what the NCAA has been like with players being allowed to move, and kind of having that, and there's good to that too, I think, and obviously some negativity to it as well. But I would say from a good standpoint in this situation is it kind of clears up the black and white of it, that, okay, why is this kid eligible and this one's not? And we've sort of had some gray area on, whatever their situation may be. They may look the same on the surface, and one kid gets eligible and one doesn't. Well, this would sort of, in my opinion, eliminate some of that. That 30-day sitting out period, and then the first time transfer as well. So I think there's definitely some positives to that standpoint. Like I said, we'll get more into that on in the next few days and week or so. But yeah, that's probably going to be happening most likely. We definitely know the date. It's February 21st is the next meeting, and would go into effect on June 1st for that to happen. So there's going to be things I think the IHSA is going to do about undue influence, and maybe strengthening those rules to, because there will be more of that, I would think, with this being allowed now. You're sort of putting freshmen, sophomores sort of in a transfer portal situation, and knowing if they have a free transfer out there or a first-time transfer out there that they can use, you could definitely see where undue influence would become a factor. So I think there'll be stronger rules with that. I don't know what that would be exactly at this point, but I think there will be. The IHSAA will look more into undue influence and maybe strengthening that, the rule for that. So that's sort of where the transfer situation stands now. Like I said, it depends on your viewpoint. I think if you think this is a huge thing or not. It is a pretty major, it's a major change from everything the IHSAA has, said in the past, and obviously we know the legislature getting involved has had a big key to that, or it may have essentially made this change happen. But yeah, I mean, I think from the education side of things, I know some are really against it. I do wonder what the coaching. If you have to adjust your coaching philosophy to a certain extent to kind of fit within this rule change or not, I don't know for sure. It's kind of probably case by case, but yeah. So we'll have more on that again. That's the first time transfer rules, what it's going to be called, and I don't know if they'll call it the first time transfer rule, but it's going to be called a first time transfer prior to your senior year. And, it'll be more traditional. If you transfer a second time, some of the more traditional rules will apply to you if you transfer a second time. But so that's number one, kind of out there right now. Number two, the Mid-State Conference announced today on Thursday that they would accept Bloomington North as their 8th member. Bloomington North, of course, has been a part of Conference Indiana, kind of a part of a conference reshuffling that we've seen quite a bit of here in recent years. Most notably, the Center Grove Carmel situation, where those two schools got out of the MIC, or were forced out of the MIC essentially after they were applying to membership in the HCC. But yeah, there's been a lot of changes in the conference realignment world in high school sports lately, and this one came about in the Mid-State when Greenwood left for the Hoosier Legends Conference. They were a longtime member of the Mid-State, but had gotten to be one of the smaller teams and were really landlocked and probably weren't going to get any bigger. So Greenwood went to the Hoosier Legends with Shelbyville, also, which left the HHC, and joined up with Beech Grove, Indian Creek, Monrovia, Speedway, Tri-West, and Triton Central. So those 6 of those schools, other than Greenwood and Shelbyville, they start play in 2025. And Bloomington North will now join the Mid-State for the 2026-27 season. So the next question is sort of what happens to the Conference Indiana group that's left. There's 5 schools left there with Bloomington South, Columbus North, the Terre Haute schools, and Southport left in that group. So, there's some, I think some schools out there that, there could be more movement in the future. Don't want to speculate too much because, you don't know for sure. And these things, this has kind of changed course several different times with some of these schools. So you do have Lebanon and Danville, McCutcheon and Harrison out there that are basically the new Sagamore Conference. So there'll probably be some more movement there right now with only four schools left in that one, or 4 schools with that group right now. So that could be something that, you could see more movement there. Obviously, the Conference Indiana is going to need more than 5 schools. So what happens with them? And then, you've got some other schools out there, like Center Grove, which is still an independent. Carmel's still an independent. Those schools with their size and their tradition of success and everything probably only fit with a certain number of others. So there would probably need to be some movement either in the MIC or the HCC to have something like that happen. But yeah, so that's kind of where that stands now. I'm curious about the future of the Mid-State down the line. Whiteland is a school that's really getting a lot bigger. They're over 2,000 students now, and they're right on the edge of being a 6A in one of those programs in football that's probably every year going to be 6A. So The future with Whiteland, that could be interesting. That's a school that's growing. And then on the other end, like Martinsville, which is definitely not. They're very competitive in a lot of sports, including football real recently here. But they are smaller, and you don't know for sure like what the what the future might hold for enrollment there. But and again, this is just kind of looking at the number. There are about 1,300 students. One of the smaller 4A. In basketball, so it's a different, when you have that amount of students compared to what a Whiteland has, that's a pretty big difference, and seems to be getting a little bit bigger here recently. So a lot of things out there to consider. Enrollment certainly, and enrollment trends really probably more than just the flat enrollment. What it is currently will be important factor in sort of speculating what the future holds for these conferences. But someone asked it today too, conferences, what's the big deal? Why does it really matter? And I would say following high school sports, I would say, yeah, it doesn't matter a ton. We follow more for the sectional, so some of the other, the tournament things that aren't necessarily tied into a conference, but conference is so important for scheduling. And then other sports too that have, you have conference meets, you have conference tournaments in some sports, and, and just flat out being able to schedule for football, and it's just so much easier to be in a conference and have something to compete for. So, conference championships maybe aren't the end of the world anymore, but being in a conference, to me, that's kind of what it matters. And I'm getting long-winded again, so I'll probably end up shortening this up. But we do have some new football coach hires as well. Hopefully going to write about, some haven't had a whole lot of time to write about them all that have recently been hired. But did Jake Chesney at Sheridan, of course, will replace Bud Wright. He was on staff there. I did write about him. But Sean Little at Southport, Josh Holden just hired this week at Eastern Hancock. Came from Greenfield Central, and then Josh Yoder at Lebanon was hired at Lebanon as well. So you have some hires there. Probably the only big one out there right now, unless I'm missing somebody, is North Central, and haven't heard on the timeline yet on that one, but obviously that's a big 6A job. Not a lot of success here lately. Obviously Derek Hart went to Jasper, where he'll be their next coach there. Only spent 2 years at North Central, and they just have not been able to kind of get over the hump here in recent seasons. But North Central probably the biggest job out there locally that's out there right now. Number 4, Brownsburg football. They will play Archbishop Spalding out of Maryland in the first game of the year. That will be at Brownsburg. Someone asked this too. You can play out of state. Outside the 300-mile radius teams now. As long as they come to you, but you can't go there. So that is a change that the IHSAA made a few years ago, probably maybe 3 years ago, to allow that. So, some schools have taken advantage of that, and being able to play some out-of-state teams. IMG Academy came to Ben Davis a couple of years ago to play Ben Davis. So, we've seen that a little bit. This Archbishop Spalding team. They were ranked number 10 in the country by Max Preps this past year, and 18 by High School Football America. So, multiple publications had them in the top 20 in the country. So, that'll be obviously a tough challenge for Brownsburg coming off the 6A state championship, but sort of an interesting game there, and also will be their new stadium, refurbished stadium, first game for that. So that's a little bit of football news as well. From that standpoint, wrote a little bit. I touched base with Matt Sisley this week. Trent Sisley's father, who's committed to IU, now plays at Montverde Academy down in Florida, and it's sort of we wrote a little bit about the two IU recruits. Kind of wait and see on what they will do. No, it's not huge news or anything like that. It's just sort of wait and see who the new coach is, kind of like everybody else, and go from there. But, I know some people say, well, you commit to a coach, you commit to a school, which one is it? I think it's everything. You have to have the conversation with the new coach before you really know what you're getting into and all that. And, And so that's kind of where that stands. I would kind of be surprised if he didn't end up going to IU, but you don't know who the coach will be either. So until you have that conversation, it's just sort of a wait and see mode. But I can't imagine Trent Sisley somebody you wouldn't want to have on your team if everything breaks right and he wants to be there. I would kind of assume he'll be a Hoosier. But yeah, that was sort of just something we had this week as well to catch up on the IU recruiting situation. Also wanted to Jerry Bomholt, talked to him this weekend. He retired at Jay County after, I believe, 44 years in coaching. He was 19th all time in coaching victories. But talked to him on, I think it was on Saturday, and he had decided to step down after he's been having some health issues and wasn't feeling well. Had and I have not talked to him since I talked to him that day, but hopefully he's feeling better and doing okay. He's 71 years old. He said he talked to his wife about didn't want to let the job kill him, basically, and he'd always said that was something he wouldn't allow to happen. And he kind of an interesting background too, because he was a coach at Anderson Highland when he was 26, and the coach Bob Fuller had a heart attack and died at halftime of a game at Lapel in 1980. This is years later. 1980 was at 45 years ago. Fuller was only 43 years old though at that time, and Jerry said at that time he made promised his wife he wouldn't let the job kill him, and he felt like it was time to walk away. But longtime coach, he'd coached at obviously coached at Highland, where he helped that team finish out the year. They were ranked high in the state at that time, and then went to Jay County and ended up coming back. But he, in between, coached at Northwestern, Shenandoah, Columbia City, Princeton. Had a couple stints at Southwestern Hanover, including one recently before he went back to Jay County. He coached at Franklin here locally, Shaw Memorial. He kind of joked at one time he was the Larry Brown of high school coaching, comparing himself to the former NBA coach who bounced around so much. But yeah, it was Jerry Bomholt stepped away after a long tenure, and hopefully he's doing better, and hopefully can enjoy retirement. That's kind of the hope, for any coach, I think, is once you get out of it, you can enjoy yourself a little bit once it's all over with. But longtime coach Jerry Bomholt retires at age 71. Also wanted to touch on the football recruiting. Wrote about Jackson Willis. This is a little bit dated, but Lutheran quarterback committed to Wabash last week, and part of a really good recruiting class for Jake Gilbert there, who just getting started as the head coach. He was the coach in waiting, formerly coached at Westfield, but had some people ask too, like, hey, what's the deal with Willis? Why didn't he commit to Division I programs? And he did have a couple of offers at one point, but man, those quarterback offers, they go away quickly. With somebody else takes them, or if you don't take them right away, they could fade away. And that's sort of what happened. And Willis was pretty honest, like he didn't have a whole lot going on, and then he ended up had a great year, another great senior year, won 2 state championships, and had put up great numbers. I believe he's 10th all time in passing yardage in state history. Then broke his hand at the left hand, his throwing hand, at the end of the sectional championship game, and couldn't play the last couple, or the last game of the season. Lutheran ended up losing in Class 2A, but yeah, he's going to be a great pickup for them. Mr. Football position award winner, so that's a big deal, obviously, for Wabash to get him on campus and get him started. But yeah, Jackson Willis commits to Wabash, obviously a big deal for that program, and getting him in there, I think can only be a benefit for Wabash. But also just last night, watched a little bit of that Jeffersonville game against New Albany. Man, that's when you start thinking about who the top teams are in the state, and we talk a lot about Fishers, and rightly so, but I think that fully formed Jeffersonville team is definitely legit. They handled, I watched it online, but handled New Albany, relatively easily. It was a pretty good game for a while. Jeffersonville then kind of got it going. Michael Cooper was really good. Again, he usually is going to Wright State, but yeah, just the presence of Trey Singleton. I think a healthy Trey Singleton makes so much difference in what that Jeffersonville team is capable of doing. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's a team. There's very few teams out there I think that have a chance to play with Fishers on a given night. I think there are some teams in that sectional. I still think highly of Noblesville. I think that's a team that, in the right situation can give Fishers a good run in that sectional. I think Westfield, obviously played Fishers very well just last week, where they were up in the fourth quarter on them. I think those are probably the two teams that have a chance in that sectional at Carmel here in a few weeks. And then elsewhere on that north side of the bracket, I don't know if there's a team out there that can beat them. I thought Crown Point might be one of those teams. They've struggled here a little bit here lately. South Bend Riley's a good team, but I don't know if they're in that category. Warsaw and Northridge, maybe. Fort Wayne, maybe. But it's going to be tough. But in the south side of the bracket, and there's a lot of good teams in there. Most of the top 4A teams are on the south. Lawrence North, Greenfield Central. You go down the list: Mount Vernon, Avon. Ben Davis potentially. Maybe Pike. Some of those teams. But yeah, I think Jeffersonville's that team. Because of Singleton, you need to have a big. I think to beat Fishers, be physical with them. And also be able to knock down threes, which they can do, especially with Cooper. So, it's a really good team. It's cool that they're good again. Because that's such a traditional team here in Indiana, and especially in Southern Indiana, it's always cool. I think when you have different parts of the state in that highest class represented, and Anderson too. I saw Anderson. Not that they're from Southern Indiana, but a different part of the state, a little bit. Outside of Central Indiana, and another traditional power. That is having a good year. Even after watching them lose to Noblesville the other night, Damian King was really good in the second half, and I think they're going to be a handful with in that sectional where they're in with Mount Vernon, Greenfield Central. They're a contender as well in that group. So you look at those three teams, man. Greenfield Central 18-2, Anderson 16-2, and Mount Vernon 13-4. So a lot of good teams in there, or those three, I should say. Very, very tough. So that'll be a tough sectional again. Let's see. That should about cover it. But appreciate you guys getting a little long-winded here. But leave it to those topics for tonight. But again, the transfer, the first-time transfer rule, I would expect that to. From everything I've heard, go into effect June 1st. It should be talked about next week at the meeting, next Friday at the next executive board meeting for the IHSAA on the 21st. And that would, again, pretty significant change. And I don't know how much it will completely change. I think we may not know that for another few years or quite a while. But how does it affect high school sports in the future? We'll see. But yeah, that's kind of the big news for now. But appreciate you joining me here, and we'll talk to you next time.